Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got an uncommon Glock, the Glock 17L. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Player, formerly Utreon, where we can do some types of videos that are no longer allowed on YouTube. Rare or uncommon are words you don't generally use when you're talking about Glocks because the things are everywhere. But the 17L is on the uncommon side. They don't make a lot of them. It's a Gen 3. I don't imagine they'll ever make a Gen 4 or Gen 5. From some angles it looks like 171, but you can see it's 17L. And it's the long slide version of the Glock 17. This was a competition gun, still is. That's what they target it for. Similar to the 34, but even longer. This is, as far as I know, the longest slide Glock currently made. And they make them in batches of every so many years. It seems like between 3 and 5 years they'll make a batch of them. They'll be all over the place for a while and then they're gone. So I found this one in the most recent batch and picked it up and figured I'd show it to everybody. It is a nice gun to shoot. So a few of the things that it's got, it does have a large cutout in the slide to lighten the slide up, because with that much more metal, the caliber's the same, the power of the ammo's the same, you need to lighten the slide up. But even with this massive cutout in it, the slide is still actually heavier than the slide on the Glock 17. So a Glock 17 slide is 12.5 ounces. This one is 13.2 ounces. So it's just about 3/4 an ounce heavier. And that can make a difference, and it did. So I'm not used to Glocks being ammo sensitive in any way. They generally eat everything. They'll work whatever junk ammo you've got. This one did not like weaker ammo. So with Federal, American Eagle, which is about on the weak side, I had a few malfunctions, failure to feeds predominantly. It didn't cycle correctly with typical 115 grain range ammo. Ran some MagTech in it and it worked well after that, and then I ran the Federal again and it did work correctly. But one thing with this is with that extra mass of that reciprocating mass of the slide, it really didn't like weak ammo. And again, that's not something I'm used to with Glocks. And I imagine with a little bit of range time, break it in a little bit, that'll settle down and it'll probably go back to typical Glock behavior and work with everything. The fact that I had to use slightly stronger ammo made no difference in recoil. The recoil on this is almost non-existent because the slide is long, there's a lot of weight out front, but it still feels well balanced when you hold it. It does have finger grooves. It's a Gen 3, has the pebble texture. It does not have replaceable back straps. And on the other side, you cannot reverse the magazine catch because, again, it's a Gen 3. Interestingly enough, they ship it with Gen 4 magazines that have the cutout on both sides. So, of course, it'll work with Gen 4 and Gen 5 or Gen 3 magazines, but you can't reverse the mag catch. It does have a slightly extended slide stop slide release, a little protrusion here that sticks out, and it does have an extended magazine release. And this extended magazine release, it's got kind of sharp edges, so it did bite into my fingers a little bit. I'll turn it so you can kind of see the difference. It bit into my fingers a little bit, so I may either replace this with a standard one or take a file and just kind of knock the corners off of those edges right along here. But this results in the overall total width being 1.30 inches as opposed to the typical 1.26 because this sticks out a little bit further. But yes, you could concealed carry this, but that's not what this is targeting. This is a competition, a range day gun, things like that. And even with this long of a barrel, even though the grip size is the same as the 17, you're going to have a little more trouble finding a comfortable way to carry this thing. But again, that's not what they're targeting with this. It comes with the 17 round magazines. It also has a 10 round available. Consistent with all of the Gen 3s, it only comes with 2 magazines as opposed to 3. But because it'll work with all of the Glock 17 mags, if you've got a Glock 17 and you're picking one of these up, your other mags will work fine with it. The sights are nice. So I'll start with this side of the sight. They're windage and elevation adjustable. They are metal, and it's your typical Glock U dot. You can see bright U, real easy to see, and then of course the camera's not focusing, but your eye will. The front sight is your typical very white dot. And they're replaceable just like any other Glock sight with whatever sights you want. because again, this is really just a Glock 17 with a slightly longer slide. Overall, I found it easy to shoot well. It was comfortable to shoot. It handled the recoil well. I already mentioned that even though it's got all that weight out front, it feels balanced. I didn't feel like it was trying to nose drop on me. So let's talk about the dimensions while I got it hanging out here. It's 9.53 inches front to back. It's 1.3 inches wide, as I mentioned, because you can see that magazine catch sticks out. If I get my hand there, give a little bit of contrast. And it's 5.47 inches tall with the magazine in it, which is identical to a Glock 17, because the grip frame is a Glock 17 grip frame. This extension on the slide is what covers the gap and hides the recoil spring. And when I get it apart, I'll show you the recoil spring is basically the same as a Gen 3 Glock 17. From a weight perspective, it's a little plumper than a 17. It weighs 26.63 ounces as opposed to the 24.87 of a Glock 17. There's a longer barrel in there, so regardless of the fact that the slide's heavier, you've also got more barrel. That's going to add some weight. The frame, the fire control group, and everything are the same. Has the inertial toggle, has the internal drop safety. Now this one does come with the Glock minus connector. It's factory, just like they do with the 34 and 35. And we'll get the magazine out here. What that results in, same take up, but a lighter, shorter break, still nice and crisp like Glock break is. Reasonable reset. You're right on the wall. There's no additional take up. And again, that relatively short, nice crisp break at about 4.5 pounds. So that minus connector does change the dynamic of the trigger a little bit, makes it a little bit lighter. I found that the trigger with any of these with the minus connector, it's actually kind of the sweet spot for triggers. Yeah, you can go custom, you can put hair triggers in these things. But if you get a Glock, put the minus connector in it, you've actually kind of got the perfect trigger for concealed carry range, whatever it is you're going to do. Now, by the way, it does have the classic Glock single slot rail, which normally it doesn't present a problem for accessories and wouldn't for this, other than the fact you've got a lot of barrel going on. So your lights and stuff may actually kind of hang out back here and may shine off the bottom of the barrel or the slide a little bit, but they should work. There should be no reason why any accessory that you've got that works on a regular Glock 17 or any other Glock wouldn't work on this. So let me take it apart and show you the internals. Pull the trigger, kind of give it a little squeeze at the back, and slide it apart. I'm going to set the slide down for the second because this part's easy. This is just a Gen 3 Glock 17. You got rails at the front, locking block, really robust locking block. This arm is for the drop safety piston, and you got nice rails at the back and the fire control group, which is the same as any other Glock other than the fact that it has the minus connector, which you can't see with the Glock gun assembled. You have to take it apart. But the frame, really no difference that you're going to see. Now if I move to the slide, first thing you'll notice is it looks like the recoil spring is 8 miles long. It's actually not. It ends right here. So I take the recoil spring out. You can see there's a cutout right there. You can kind of see it right there. That shelf is what the recoil spring sits on. So the recoil spring itself is really the same length as a Glock 17. And all this extra is just metal back beyond here. And of course the holes to be able to access the front sight to replace it. And it has this wafer spring with a plastic guide rod. Move past that. We've got this monstrous 6.02 inch barrel. This just great big long barrel. With 9mm it will give you a little more velocity, but that's not really the big key. You are going to get some good stabilization with it. And it has your typical relatively smooth, kind of a machine polished Glock ramp. Looks like I didn't get this perfectly clean. I kind of missed some residue, as you can see some of it on my thumb. It is actually a smooth, well done ramp. If I hadn't missed it with cleaning, it would have looked a lot nicer. And like all Glocks, it has the polygonal rifling. This does not have that new Marksman, which is kind of the hybrid rifling that you find in the Gen 5s. So this is your classic polygonal that's in pretty much every other Gen 4 and earlier Glock. Well done, typical of Glock. The machining is really well done and smooth and clean. This end of the barrel is the same as any other Glock 17 barrel. You have your drop safety plunger here, sear hook here, and everything else is pretty much standard Glock. It's well machined, clean. Of course, they don't do any fancy polishing or anything unnecessary. It's machined to make it work. and they stop there, so they don't really get creative or fancy with it. There are some drilled out slots here, again trying to reduce the weight, trying to bring it down into a weight where it'll operate reliably. You'll see these on other guns, they just tend to be shallower or shorter. Reassembly, relatively easy. Drop the barrel in. Now the one thing, it's easy to drop the barrel through the hole if you're not paying attention. And if you do that, it won't hurt anything. You just have to back it up and get it lined up again. Put the recoil spring in. The recoil spring can be a little twitchy. It seems to sit shallower here, so getting it in there, sometimes you'll miss and it'll kind of bind up. Slide it back onto the frame. And you're back in business. So just like anything else, they're easy to maintain, easy to live with, easy to take care of, more slide to clean, but beyond that, they work the same. So those of you guessed on our teaser earlier in the week that a Glock 17L, you were correct. This is what it is. It was a pleasure to shoot. Hammer even liked it, and he tends to like Springfields and Walthers. And it's easy to shoot well, it's easy to control, and probably worth having. They're a little pricey. They can go between $650 and $900. You're not going to see discounts on these as often because they're harder to get, so you're going to pay what the market's going to bear. But beyond that, I would say it's a nice Glock to have. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.